welcome to UFO Enigma. I'm Ron Rickey, your host. Okay, we have a lot to cover today, and I'm going to hop around a little bit, and we'll go over some recent sightings from England and from the United States, and we're going to touch a little bit on the Jupiter thing that's supposed to happen next month. It's getting everybody quite excited. Okay, now, the first article is from the Mail on Sunday. This is out of London, England, and its date line was February 20th of this year here, and it was titled, "It Came from Outer Space, or Did It?" And it was a pretty good little article. I found it interesting in that it came across with the typical English tongue-in-cheek type of humor, which I really enjoy. Now, it seems that three men from, I hope I'm pronouncing these names right, Dagenham, Essex, went on a fishing trip, and they went fishing at a place called Rollesby Broad, and it was in, I guess, the county of Norfolk, and the date that they went was on October 23rd of last year, so this was last fall. The story went on to say that the fishing wasn't too good because of either the wind or the weather or something, and they were starting to wind up their little outing, and they're stowing their gear and fishing poles and putting everything away. And one of the men looked up and shouted and pointed up at an exceedingly bright object approaching them from very low on the horizon. And they claim that the object was traveling on a direction line more south to north, and the time of this sighting was approximately 3:15 in the afternoon, so it was a broad daylight sighting. Okay, now the article went on to say that this object was coming towards them at a pretty good clip, and as it did approach, it went from a very bright light to a very distinct diamond shape. Now, we've been studying some of your modern sightings, and I think this is the first time a diamond shape's been reported. We've had deltas, we've had your usual cigar shapes and saucer shapes. Okay, now, fortunately, one of these men had a Panasonic camcorder, and he started to record the flight of the object. Now, the article was on the sheet here. Give you an idea of what they actually saw through the lens there. It went on to say that he captured about 6 seconds worth of film, and he stopped it as the object totally zoomed right up over their heads, and picking up speed tremendously. Now, the past few weeks we've been covering especially the sightings in North Carolina, and some of these objects have been same as for the last 50 years. When they reported, the speeds are unbelievable. And again, as they went over, no noise. Now, these men were sort of nonchalant about the whole thing, and they more or less wrote it off as some sort of a military experimental aircraft, and really didn't think too much about it. But it seems though they did change their minds after they viewed the film they had taken, and the film showed exactly what they had seen: a bright glowing object speeding towards the camera and changing to a very sharply defined diamond shape as it neared. Now, the film was sent to the Ministry of Defense. They cover, that would be like the Project Blue Book, and they're still in operation over in England, the MOD. And one of the men in charge there, Mr. Pope, N.G. Pope, he's the Secretariat of the Air Staff. He viewed the film. Now, Mr. Pope claimed the MOD investigated some 258 UFO reports in '93. And if you look back, a lot of these can be same as when Blue Book did their investigation. They could write off about 90% of them. And the MOD just about agreed. They said that most of these could be identified as planes, meteors, birds, you know, some object that just couldn't be identified due to distance or speed or whatever reason. Now, the men there that submitted the film asked if the object was a friend or foe, because I guess by looking at this particular film they took, they got kind of nervous, and being so close to one of these things, they were probably wondering if they're being invaded by something. So unfortunately, Mr. Pope gave him an answer, and I guess the wheels of government turn just as slow in England as they do anywhere else. So he claimed that there would be a wait of about a month or so, between 1 or 2 months, for a confirmation one way or the other on their film. That would have been, you know, the end of the story, but these men did submit a copy of the film to the newspaper, the Mail, the one that wrote the story, and they rushed it right out, no problems, and to a private lab. And it was Network Security Management in Mayfair, probably a local outfit. And the man in charge there, John Walken, he was there in their video forensic video department, and after some deliberation and viewing of the film, probably many times, he said all he could determine was that the object was real. Now, they let it go as that. It was in other words, what they did shoot was something flying. It wasn't a lens flare or something, a reflection off the camera lens. As we go along, we will see other opinions saying that it wasn't. But the article also didn't say if this particularly real object was an airplane or something of extraterrestrial origin. Maybe they didn't really analyze it that far down. They probably didn't blow it up or anything. Inquiries to the Meteorological Bureau in London's Weather Centre claimed that it wasn't a balloon and it wasn't a weather plane of some sort that they usually send up to check the weather. The Great Yarmouth Coast Guard Station reported that they had some reports of a flare in that general vicinity. Now, as you went along here, this sighting did start to, you know, take on the shape of a good, genuine, unknown sighting. Then, as the wheels started turning a little bit, in come your monkey wrenches. So there was a Mr. Bernie Forward, who was a senior inspector for aircraft accident investigations, the branch at Farnsborough, and he came forth with a somewhat more conventional explanation to the thing. Now, Mr. Forward's branch where he works was responsible for the investigation of that tragedy of the crash of the 747 over Lockerbie. So this is a pretty well-respected outfit right here. And Mr. Forward and his colleagues did speculate that the diamond shape recorded on this film was a prism effect, and they said it was common on this particular type of a camcorder. And he actually had a model, and he could show exactly on his own film how he could do it. Now, to wind it up, representative of Panasonic itself, Mr. Martin Hansen, he looked at the film and he said, it looks like a camera iris image. So there's your reflection. Now we have two sources saying it was a reflection, another expert source saying that it's something real. So you'll find this very common in this field. And Mr. Philip Mantle, this is kind of interesting because this is where you would think this is a UFO investigation group, the man in charge. Philip Mantle, director of the investigation for UFOs for Britain, British Research Organization, he agreed that it was an aircraft that they had filmed. So now we're starting to tip the scales 3-to-1. We got 3 conventional and 1 out of this world. Okay, the male agreed with the results of the last 3 tests, but they couldn't explain what the 3 men actually did see. I mean, granted, they had the film and everything. Films can be doctored, they can be faked, but they still weren't there. And the fishermen, they still wanted to know what they saw, and they said, don't forget, the first expert witness said that the object was real on the film. So, as of the writing of this article, Mr. Pope claimed the Ministry of Defense was still pursuing the matter vigorously. And the article ended on sort of a humorous note, and by offering an official statement, I've sort of changed it around a little bit here, but he just told everybody that saw one of these things to go to bed and don't watch any flying saucer movies, and we'll all be okay. That's how the article ended. Okay, now for our next article here, we go to the getting a little closer to home, the Herald Journal of Syracuse, New York. And the date line was April 15th of '94. This is quite recent, and it was titled, here we go, another corn crop circle thing. Volunteers search cornfield after reports of fallen UFO. I don't know if they actually saw circles here, but the UFO was spotted over a cornfield, so I'm sure there's going to be more on this particular. It was kind of a short story, but there'll probably be a follow-up. In fact, the headline is almost as long as the story, but here goes. Now, it seems like this is interesting because there was a number of witnesses. I can see if there's just one or, a light in the sky or something. There were some pretty detailed observations here. Okay, now, a number of people, at least 4 that I've read in the paper here, witnessed a UFO descending into a field in Oswegatchie, some 90 miles northeast of Syracuse, and I would imagine it's right on the Vermont border. It's probably up by the Lake Champlain area. Now, the incident occurred at 8:15 on Thursday before the article was written. They didn't give an exact date. And although it is brief, it is kind of interesting, so we'll just run down some of the things that they saw here. The description of the object, which makes it, pretty interesting, is they all agreed. They agreed on color. And as the witnesses got closer to this sighting, more detail was picked up. Okay, and the fact that one of these people had seen this UFO was a New York State trooper even makes it even better. I've done lots of stories, reports from police officers of various states and countries, and because of their training, they make excellent witnesses. They're trained to observe. So when you get a policeman that sees this and he can't identify it, it's probably something up there that shouldn't be there. Okay, the witness that seemed to be the closest was a man, and he said that it had the look of an airplane. Now, having the look of an airplane, since he didn't say if he heard noise or anything, let's put this one here in the cigar-shaped category. The object was reported to have 1 or 2 rows of red lights. Now, this sort of reminds me, before I go on, this sort of reminds me of the January Marblehead sighting right here in Marblehead, Mass. Although there weren't red lights, but there were rows of lights on it. And it was sort of a delta shape, but the rows of lights seemed to fit the same pattern. And the fact that this, he said it looked something like an airplane, it kind of reminded me of a sighting way back, one of the old classics. It was the Childs and Whitted sighting, which I covered in depth. That was, the Childs and Whitted were the pilots of a DC-3, Eastern Airlines DC-3, I'm pretty sure, and they were flying along and they were buzzed by a airplane-shaped object with a huge trail of fire coming out of the tail, and I guess he had to rack the plane over in a pretty tight turn to get out of its way, and it was coming at a good clip. Okay, back to this New York article. Now, according to this article, the UFO was reported by at least 3 other people besides the state trooper. And it must have been a good startling sighting and good and crisp, because police and rescue departments on the area were called out. It did look like something was crashing into that field, or at least making a forced landing. And Fort Drum is not too far from this particular spot, and they sent out an Army helicopter, and this chopper was equipped with infrared night vision devices, so they weren't fooling around. With all the people, the ambulances, the police, and the fire department, whatever, and the Army chopper flying around, no one found anything. Now, the district deputy fire coordinator claimed their department didn't know what it was, but that it didn't, from their reports that they received, didn't resemble any conventional aircraft. I don't know whether this is just a conflict or if they just didn't get the sighting of the closest fellow that was there that said it did look a little like an airplane. I don't know, but one side says it didn't, one side said it did, and it seems like all the stories I'm doing today have conflicts galore. So this fire coordinator, he claimed that the Ogdensburg International Airport in Burlington, Vermont, so that's right on the line, they reported that they had no radio transmissions from any incoming flights. Now, this promises to be a pretty good story. Now, if they can do a little more digging, what they need is, I'm sure MUFON's probably up there and digging. They got to get some more details, and if 4 people saw it, you know some other people saw it. So we'll probably have to keep an eye on that. I'm sure there'll be a follow-up on this, especially if they found any landing marks. Okay, now this next article, causing people getting pretty excited about this, and I just happened to get an old issue of Time. This may or may not have anything to do with UFOs, but it does have something to do with space. And it came from the May 23rd, 1994 issue of Time magazine, and it was titled Collision Course. Now, according to the article, and a lot of people are aware of this, and there are telescopes already permanently focused on the planet Jupiter. According to the article, the giant planet Jupiter will be struck by a huge meteorite on July 16th of this year. So, I mean, we're coming up now. Now, the first collision is to be followed by a series of others, and it's going to take about a week for all these but some of these objects are really big. It's going to take about a week for them to all hit. Now, what I'm trying to put this into the UFO category is, sometimes it isn't unusual for great UFO activity to follow some sort of a cataclysm, a comet, something like that. I'll just use an example, like when Mars closes in on Earth, or as the astronomers call it, when it comes into opposition, that means on its elliptical orbit every 17 years or so, it gets real close to Earth. And for some reason, there is an upsurge in UFO activity. Now, for example, Mars was in opposition the last time around the late 80s, 88, 89. And if you can remember from watching some of the shows, it was an especially good year, especially 88, and especially around the Gulf Breeze area, where we did 2 whole shows on Gulf Breeze alone. It was like a 6-month sighting. Okay, now let's get back to this time story. The article claims that some of these bolides will be as large as 2.5 miles in diameter. And supposedly, I would imagine it's kind of a guess on their part, but it's from a comet. And that for many centuries, this comet's been in the sort of the clutches of the gravity of the giant Jupiter. And discoverers of this particular comet are 3 astronomers, David Levy, Carol and Eugene Shoemaker. And the article does give some rather interesting facts on the impending occurrences. There was a lot of technical stuff. If you have time, a magazine article on hand, you could really spend some time reading this. They call the comet the Shoemaker-Levy 9 for obvious reasons for the discoverers. And the article more or less describes the impending collision in terms of the power of H-bomb blast. And they went on to say, just to give you an idea, that the largest man-made blast was achieved back in 61. If you want to call this an achievement, it was done by the Russians in 1961, and it measured 58 megatons. Okay, now the article did go on to say that the force of, they're figuring at least 21 hits on the planet's surface, or maybe not the surface, but its atmosphere. The combined force of all these hits will total 20 million megatons. That's like 20 million megaton bombs, and it's almost unbelievable. They also went on to say that article was just full of graphs and all kinds of things. It's a very interesting article, and they claim that this particular collision could make the planet actually ring like a bell. So I don't know if we have instruments that'll pick stuff like that up, but they're claiming it. And they said if you go out and look at it, the planet could appear to glow at least twice its brilliance in the night sky. So, I mean, this is going to be something really to watch. And if you have a telescope or something like that, just set it up. I think this could be, I hope, entertainment. Now, if you read your astronomy books or whatever, you'll find that there is an area between Mars and Jupiter. It's kind of an interesting place in our solar system. And we have mysterious Mars, which has its two moons, and I do have articles in my UFO literature there that say some scientists speculate that the small moon, I think Deimos, is man-made and made in metal. That was one theory that I think I covered some time ago. Then after Mars, in between Mars and Jupiter, there's a belt of broken up asteroids. Now the theories also run rampant as to what that is, and one of the theories was that it was a 10th planet that blew itself up somehow, and all the pieces are strung out in its orbit in between Mars and Jupiter. Now, another theory claims that they are pieces of more heavenly bodies attracted and trapped by the immense gravity of Jupiter. I personally favor the blown-up planet theory simply because there has been for a long time, been the theory of a 10th planet, or there was a 10th planet in the solar system. And even in astrology, there is a calculation involving the inclusion of a 10th planet when they do their astrological calculations. Now, the article claims there is that this collision could actually give Jupiter a second roving spot. Now this is unbelievable, and Jupiter has 12 moons, and some of these moons are about as big as the Earth. And to me, it sort of looks like a tiny solar system within a solar system. Now the article claims that our space probe, I'm going to have to wind this up, and by the time we meet again, this thing should be happening. Galileo will be in a good position to photograph what's going to happen. But if you remember I think it was last summer when they launched this thing, though it will have a beautiful look at the planet, Galileo's been plagued with technical difficulties. So whether or not the thing is going to actually work or not, we don't know. And the article, like I said, the article is quite long, and so far I just picked out a few of the more interesting facts. And like I said, now we'll have to watch for it, and I don't know whether when something like this does happen, when Mars does close up or when there's a comet going over, the correlation between some kind of a heavenly disturbance and UFO reports does seem to increase, mainly because maybe there's a lot more people actually get their necks cranked looking at the sky. That's probably a good reason, but they're still, they're still seeing something. So keep an eye, watch. This is going to be a good 2-week period. Bye-bye.